Do you want to see the fretboard in a whole new way? Well, stick around because I'm going to be diving into the CAGED system and show you how it ties chords, scales and arpeggios together effortlessly. Let's dive into it. In the previous lesson, we checked out the C shape for major chords and connecting pentatonic, hexatonic, heptatonic, and arpeggios, all with this shape. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at the A shape and doing the same thing. So make sure you check out the C shape after this because both of these connect together. So in this lesson, we're going to be checking out this A shape. So this is a D major A shape, and then if I hold that chord around this one position on the neck, we've got access to the pentatonic scale, which is the major pentatonic. Then we've got access to our 6-note hexatonic scale, which is going to be the major blues scale. Love the sound of that. Then we've got our major scale. And finally, we have our arpeggio. And there's two different ways I kind of like to play this. Here's the other way. Isn't that super cool? With that one shape, we've got access to all those different tools to help us write music. Okay, so let's build this shape on the computer. So this is the A shape. This is movable to any key. We're not going to be playing that low E. So this is what the shape looked like. Now you can play it like I am here, or you can bar on that 7th fret. So this is in the key of D. And I know that because of the root note on the A string. On the 5th fret of the A string, that's a D. So this must be a D major chord. So this is just the A shape for D major. You may be used to this. That's the D shape for D major as well. That's just coincidence, but that's the same as that, but using the D shape. So that's got all the same notes in there. Okay, so if you want to move it to the key of E, you can move it up 2 frets, or F, or G, so on and so forth. So that is the shape we're going to be working on. It's based off the open A shape like this. And what we've done is we've made it movable, so move it up a fret. And with our first finger, we've created that nut and created that same open chord that's movable. Now, as I said earlier, you could use your 3rd finger and bar down like that if you want, but be aware that you shouldn't play that high E if you do that, because that's actually a major 6th. It's a lovely chord, but it's not what we're looking for. Great ending for a song. But anyway, so this is the shape. I like to do this kind of fingering. So bar from the 3rd fret. This is the key of C. So bar from the 3rd fret down on the A string, and then put your 2nd finger on the 5th fret of the D, then underneath on the 5th fret of the G, and then your pinky underneath on the 5th fret of the B. And then you've got that high E string ringing out from your bar of your 1st finger. So that's where we're going to be basing our scales and arpeggios around. So in the last lesson, we looked at the C shape. So if we did this in the key of D, there's our root. We'd connect this A shape like this from that same root here. So there's a D with the C shape, there's a D with the A shape. In the last lesson, I think we did it in the key of G. So what we'll be doing this lesson is doing this, connecting that same root there and playing it here. So if I write the C shape out on the fretboard like this, there's our C shape we worked with in the previous lesson, and all we're doing is connecting this A shape here. So let's get rid of that one. And as you'll notice, once again, as mentioned in the previous lesson, all you have in a major chord is just roots, major 3rds and perfect 5ths. These intervals are just repeated. So in the key of C, that would be C, E and G, because it's the 3rd and 5th note. So C, D, E, 3rd note, F, then G, so C, E, G. So the root would be C if it was in the key of C. Let me move it down to the key of C. So if I change these notes to notes, it would be C, G's and E's. But the best way to see them is not as notes, is as intervals, because then it's movable. All you need to know is that R, which stands for root. So if you know the names of all the notes on the low E, A and D string, you're completely set for the CAGED system. So I know that on the 10th fret is a G, and if we move that shape there, we've got a G major with the A shape. Okay, so moving on to building scales around this shape that we can use to create music. So if we've got our A shape again here, what we're going to be doing is building a pentatonic scale. So for the C shape, it was shape 3 of the major pentatonic. That means this one will be shape 4, which looks like this. You may recognize it as being shape 5 of the minor pentatonic, but the root is in a different place. It would usually be on the major 6th, but we won't go into that. So that is, let me move this up a little bit. So there is our major pentatonic. So what we want to do is we want to play the chord first, and around this shape we want to then play the scale, starting from the root and then moving up 2, 3, 5, 6. That's the intervals in this scale, and then another octave up and then descend back down. So it looks something like this. Play the chord and then play the scale. You can go back down to the high, low E, which is probably good practice. But always end on the root note so you know where you are. So there we have the major pentatonic built around this chord shape. Next up, let's build our hexatonic scale around this chord shape. So once again, let's build our chord here. And we've got the major blues scale, which is a 6-note scale, and it's essentially exactly the same as the major pentatonic. So we've got all the same intervals like this, but we're going to be adding in a minor third, which is known as the blues note. And for this shape, it's either here or here. So once again, you want to play the chord first and then play the scale. Then back to the chord. I do love the major and minor blues. That extra note really does add the blues flavor, and that's something to be aware of if you're not aware already. Whenever you land on the blues note, or the blue note as they call it, which is the minor third with the major blues and then the flat 5 in the minor blues, you don't want to stay on that note too long. It's more of a passing tone. So for example, here I'm using that minor third as a passing tone. I'm not landing on it for too long. And it works really nicely. Okay, so let's build the major scale around this shape. We've got a root, major second, put our major third here. Perfect 4th. We've already got the 5th in there. We want to find a major 6th, major 7th. There we've got our first octave of a major scale. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7-note scale, root. Then we want to put a major second. It would usually be here on the other strings, but because of the tuning between the G and B strings, we're moving it. 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. And there we go. Let me just finish off the rest of the shape. So here is the major scale shape around this A shape. So first of all, we play the chord, and then we're going to play the scale around it. So there we go. There is the major scale, root 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, root 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. So in the key of G, let me write this here, key of G. And by the way, if you'd like all of these diagrams, they are available on my Patreon page. I've got 50% off yearly memberships, and there's hundreds of lessons on there. It's it's the cost of a couple of guitar lessons, private lessons, and you've got years of videos to go through. I've been building it up for the last 5 years, so there's plenty of content. Get your money's worth for, I think it's probably works out 60, 70 pounds. What's that, $80 or something? But for a whole year's access to all of my stuff, bargain. Anyway, back to this. Last up, we've got the arpeggio. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this, no, I'll leave this here. So here is our chord shape that we are seeing as our skeleton. And as I mentioned before in my previous video, to create a true arpeggio, we want a major arpeggio. You need to have the order of root, major third, and perfect fifth. Unfortunately, unlike the C shape where we could just run the C shape, we need to add in a third. So we've got two options. We can go here or we can go up here. The first option, play the chord, and then you can do the arpeggio like down, down, hammer, down, 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 then up, 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 pull off, up, up. Which I find that shape to be quite awkward. What you could do instead is, so a downstroke, hammer on to the 14th fret, where you're getting that major third over here. Let me put it on the fretboard over here. So you're grabbing that major third over here. And then use your second finger to bar those 3 notes on the 12th fret. Down, 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 hammer, down, 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 down. Then what you could do is you could hammer on to the 15th fret, which is actually another root. Which is a great sweep picking shape this is. And what you're doing there is you're completing the arpeggio. So root, 3, 5, root, 3, 5, root. So you've got 2 octaves of a major arpeggio. But it is quite tricky to get used to this rolling technique if you've never done it before, where you've got notes on the same fret on adjacent strings. So when we're going to that D, G and B strings, you want to get used to kind of rolling your finger like this. But don't worry too much, it's more about getting used to that's the arpeggio. You could just use alternate picking like this, which is perfectly fine. So there we have it. We've got our pentatonic scale, our hexatonic scale, our heptatonic scale, and our arpeggio. Make sure you first play the chord, grab a metronome, and then play one after the other. So for example, I don't think I did this in the last video, but make sure you go back and apply this. Grab a metronome, super slow, 60 beats per minute, maybe play the chord for 1 bar, then do 8th notes of the pentatonic shapes. 1, 2, 3, 4, chord. 2, 3, and 4, and. And then play the major blues scale, then the major scale and the arpeggio, etc. That's how you want to practice it. Then build up speed, then have some fun grabbing a backing track and try and stay in that position. Let's say you look for one in the key of G. Try grabbing notes from the major pentatonic. Whether you're doing some kind of sequencing or writing some licks, then try and add in the major blues. And have some fun with that, and also do it with the major scale and the arpeggios. You get the idea. Okay, so that's it for this lesson. Hopefully you learned something new. The CAGED system is probably one of the best visualization systems out there for standard tuning on the guitar. A lot of people knock it, but I think those people don't really understand how to utilize it. I think knowing that you can visualize all these different scales and arpeggios is a bit of a game changer in understanding how to use it. Then you've just got to apply your licks and ideas, and once you've done it in one key, the beauty is that you can do it in any key. So for example, if you had this lick in the key of G, if you're playing the key of D, all you need to do is find out where D is and then take the same lick and play it again. So once you've learned one position, you've learnt them in all 12 keys by just shifting them about. It's a very powerful tool. Okay, that's it for this lesson. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you for part 3 next week.